Okay, so this is the first lecture of a mini course on Fano foliations together with Carolina Araujo. And before I start this first lecture, let me just tell you a few words about the plan for the mini course. So for today, the lecture says 0. This is quite independent of the three others. So today I will discuss algebraicity of smooth formal schemes. And in particular, I will restate a theorem due to both Bogomolov-McQuillan and some other related results, a theorem due to Campana-Pound, so about the algebraicity of leaves of foliations. And then Carolina, in his first lecture, will introduce Fano foliations and their first properties. The third lecture will be, in some sense, more technical. I will discuss some tools needed for our study of Fano foliations. So I will discuss the adjunction formula for the closure of an algebraic leaf of some possibly singular foliation, together with some applications. And in a final lecture by Carolina, she will discuss the classification and the general strategy of classification of Fano foliations of large index. So for today, let's start with the setup. So I want to discuss algebraicity of smooth formal schemes. So X is here a projective variety over a field, over any field of any characteristic. Small x will be a key point. I will denote by x at the formal completion of x at the point x. And I will consider d at a formal subscheme. So a good way to view a formal subscheme is, in this case, is precisely just an increasing sequence of subschemes. The VI, this is the sequence here. The support of the VI is exactly x, so the support has dimension 0. And d at is nothing but the direct limit of the VIs. Now just notice that the VIs are not in general uniquely determined by V at, so we'll have to make some choices at some point. I will come back very soon to this. Now, given a formal scheme, so its dimension is nothing but the crude dimension of the K algebra of regular functions on V hat, and the regular functions on V hat are precisely defined as the inverse limit of the global sections of the VIs. And we will say that this V hat is smooth if this K algebra of regular functions is isomorphic to a ring of formal power series, coefficient in K, and T1 and Tn variables. So here n is by definition the dimension of V hat. Now, in assuming that the hat is smooth, we will also make the following assumption in the sequel. So as I said, you can change the VIs, keeping the same formal scheme. And I will assume that the VIs are chosen in such a way that the ring of regular function on VI is precisely this one. So this is just the formal power series divided by the power of the maximal ID to the I plus 1 power. So this will be used later on. So this is just to make some choices. So here is a typical example. So you start from K being the field of complex number, and you consider inside X, so or the complex analytic space associated to X. For short, I will say X. You consider inside a smooth germ of analytic variety passing through the point X. And to this germ of analytic variety, you can associate a smooth formal scheme at X, just by defining VI by its ring of functions. So you look at the ring of holomorphic functions at X, so the local ring, and you divide by the maximal ID to the power I plus 1, exactly as we did before. So taking the direct limit of the VIs, you end up with the formal scheme. The formal scheme is smooth because the germ is smooth by assumption, and the dimension of your formal scheme is precisely the dimension of the analytic space you started with. Okay. So before I introduce the notion of algebraicity of formal schemes, I want just to state an easy lemma. And the lemma says that the following two assertions are equivalent. So the first one is that so the setup is as before. So there exists an algebraic variety defined over the same field, passing through the small point x, and such that v hat is a branch of v through the point. So a branch is nothing but a component of the formal completion of v at the given point. This is the first statement, and this is equivalent to the following one. The dimension of the Zariski closure of v hat in x is precisely the dimension of v hat. So just to give an example of what you should have in mind, consider the plane cubic nodal curves given by, say, this equation. It is singular at the origin. And if you look at the completion at the origin, so corresponding to the maximal ideal, what you get is just the union of two lines passing through the origin. So each of the two lines is a formal branch. This is an analytic subvariety. Now let me just give the proof of this this lemma. So this is very easy. So first you consider Y to be the Zariski closure of V hat, your formal scheme in X. So Y is an integral subscheme of X, passing through the point, small x for sure. And moreover, any branch of Y through the given point has dimension precisely the dimension of Y. This is just because the formal completion is flat and of relative dimension 0. Now let's show that the 1 implies 2. So 1 was the fact that for some variety V height is a branch of the formal completion. So if V contains V height, by definition of Y has to be contained in V for sure. So now our assumption is that V hat is a branch of V, but since V hat is also contained in Y, V hat must be a branch of Y as well. So in particular, the dimension of V hat is precisely the dimension of Y. And this is exactly statement 2. Now for the converse, so suppose that the Zariski closure has the right dimension, so the dimension of Y is precisely the dimension of V hat. And what we can do is just consider V equal to V hat. By assumption, V hat is contained in Y, and the dimension of V hat is the right one. So for sure, V hat has to be a branch of the Zariski closure. So in particular, 2 implies 1. So the way to understand this is just, this is the geometric meaning, and this is the way we will prove that something is algebraic. Let me just give the formal definition. So you say that our formal scheme is algebraic if one of the above conditions are satisfied. I said above, but I have copied the conditions here. So remember that being algebraic is equivalent to the Zariski closure as the dimension of the formal scheme. This is the main definition of the talk here. Let me give 2 examples. So the two easy examples. So the first is you consider a formal power series in K of T1 up to Tn, assume that F vanishes at the origin. You can consider the graph, the formal graph of this formal power series, V hat, contained in the affine space of dimension n+1, and with support the origin. And the graph is formally defined by this principal ideal generated by this element, Z minus F of T1 Tn, in the ring of formal power series in T1 Tn Z. Maybe in a more concrete way, if you want to define the Vi as before. So what you do is just you define F, you write F as a polynomial of degree at most I, plus some higher order terms. And then you can consider Vi, again inside the affine space of dimension n+1, to be a closed subscheme of this subscheme with support the origin. So the spec of K of T1 Tn divided by the maximal ideal to the power, there is a Z that is missing here. to the maximal ideal to the power I plus 1. And you consider Vi defined just by this polynomial equation, V at most I. And then V hat is nothing but a direct limit of the VIs. So you can define very concretely what is the graph. Now you can check that the graph is algebraic if and only if our power series here is algebraic over the field of rational function on the affine space of dimension n. This is again very concrete. Another very important example for us is the following. Suppose that the base field is the field of complex numbers, and X is a smooth complex variety, and G is a regular foliation. Now you can consider L to be the germ of a leaf of our foliation through a given point. We saw that this induces a formal subscheme, B hat, with support X. And you can check that this formal subscheme is algebraic if and only if the leaf itself is algebraic. So for a leaf to be algebraic means that L is open in its Zariski closure. Okay. So now I want to state a criterion that guarantees that a given formal subscheme is algebraic, and this criterion is due to Bost. And as you will see, this is very easy to state, and the proof is elementary, but this is very powerful. So the data are exactly as before, except now that X is assumed to be projective over any field. Again, you start with a K point, and you choose an unpoline model. Now we consider a formal, smooth formal subscheme of the formal completion of X at a given point X. Exactly as before. I'm assuming that here that the subscheme is smooth. And the criterion is the following. So this formal, the smooth formal subscheme is algebraic if and only if there is a positive constant C, as such that for any positive integer and any global section of L to the power G, such that L does not vanish identically on our formal subscheme, when the multiplicity of S is bounded by the constant time J. So we have a control on the multiplicity in terms of this power of the line model we started with. So just let me recall that the multiplicity in this setting is defined as follows. So this is the order. You have to think of it as the order of vanishing at the point. So this is just the maximum of the integers such that S with respect to Vi is identically 0. And the assumption that S is not identically 0 means that the multiplicity is not plus infinity. There is to be bounded by something. So this is the criterion. So I want to give the proof of this criterion, and I will only explain the sufficiency. So assuming that we have this constant here, positive, satisfying these conditions, I will show that V height, in fact, is algebraic. Okay, so recall that this was the content of the lemma. So in order to prove that V height is algebraic, you first consider the Zariski closure of X. And what we have to show is that the dimension of this Zariski closure is precisely D, but since it is obviously at least D the dimension of V hat, we have to prove such an equality. So we want to show that the dimension of Y is at most the dimension of D hat. So this is the goal of the proof. Now, I have to show that, how to get such an estimate. So since we are working with projective varieties, the one way to do this is just to consider the space of global sections of L to the power G restricted to Y, compute the dimension, and to show that as G goes to infinity, this is bounded by this is controlled by G to the power D. If we have such an equality, C does not depend on G, for sure. If you manage to find such an equality, this will imply that Y has dimension at most D. And this is precisely what we are going to do. So we want to understand this space of global sections, and we want to understand its dimension. So let me just let me fix an integer. So this is just to write the correct things, but this is not very important. So you apply Search vanishing, and you find a positive number, G naught, as such that the restriction map from the global section on X of this line bundle to the global section on Y is a surjective map for G at least G naught. So in particular, we will be able to translate any assumption on this global section about the multiplicities into assumptions on sections here as soon as G is large enough. This is just why we fixed this G naught. Now, as I said, we want to understand the space of global sections here. And what we do, we introduce a filtration on this space. You define a filtration by Fi. So for any non-negative integer, Fi is nothing but the set of the sections, the global section with multiplicity at least I. In other words, this is the set of sections, of global sections on Y, such that the restriction of S to Vi is identically 0. So you see, since the Vi is an increasing sequence, you get a decreasing filtration on the space of global sections here. And we want to understand this filtration. So the first remark that is obvious, recall that Y, by definition, is the Zariski closure of the hat. So this implies that the restriction, the map induced by restriction of section on Y, sections on V hat, sorry, again, this is a typo, this should be V hat here. So the restriction map has to be injective. In other words, if you start with a section on Y that is non-zero, then it has a multiplicity. It cannot vanishes identically along the hat. Or you can replace this in the following way. This is what we want. What we want in the end, if you intersect all the pieces of the filtration, you get exactly 0. So if you understand the pieces of the filtration, in the end, you will be able to understand the space of global sections here. So let's continue. Proof. So now there is this obvious sequence. You consider the ideal of Vi plus 1. Y is contained in the ideal of Vi because Vi is an increasing sequence. And the co-kernel of this map is just the conormal bundle of Vi and Vi plus 1. Recall that Vi is supported at one point, so this is supported at one point also. And this exact sequence, if you twist by L to the power j, restricted to Y, here, induces an injective map from the Fi, mod out by Fi plus 1, into the space of global section of this guy here, twisted by L to the power j. So this is easy. Now we recall that we made a choice for the VIs because the hat was smooth, and because of this choice, the normal bundle of Vi into Vi plus 1 is just a symmetric power, the I symmetric power of the normal bundle of V0 in V1. So this is just a tangent space of a point in V. So this is this symmetric power. And in particular, this implies that this dimension here is certainly at most the dimension of this space. This space can be computed using this formula, and you get this number here. Okay. So we have a bound for this quotient, for the dimension of this quotient. And now, so far, we have not used the assumption, the main assumption in the theorem. So suppose that G is large enough. Then by assumption, this piece of the filtration has to be 0 if I is sufficiently large with respect to G. So if I is larger than Cg. This is exactly our assumption on the multiplicities of section in both criteria. So in the end, let me just come back to the previous slide. Recall that the intersection of all the pieces of the filtration is precisely 0. So this implies that if you want to understand this dimension, this is for sure at most the sum over all I of the dimension of the quotient, the successive quotients here. But we know that this sum here is in fact finite, because most of these quotients are 0, because the filtration itself is 0. The sum is finite, and we have a number here. We have computed a bound on the dimension of this quotient. So now you can check very easily that this sum here grows at g to the power d as g goes to infinity. Okay, so this is exactly what we were looking for. So this implies that y has dimension of most d. So in particular, this implies that our formal scheme is in fact algebraic. So let me just give you two references for this statement of Bost, because in fact the statement is used in the paper by Bost in 2001, but it is not stated there. And it appears in a paper by Bost again in 2004. So it is really stated in this paper in 2004. Now I want to extend this to the case where the support of the formal scheme is not a point, but is a quasi-projective variety of positive dimension. The statement looks complicated, but the point is that we want to apply this to possibly singular foliations on possibly singular varieties. So we have to allow some singularities. So let me state the proposition. So this is proposition B, but you will see that this is very similar to the previous one. So you start with two complex projective varieties. Now y in x, so y is now plays the role of the point x before. You consider an open set in x dense, and I assume that the open cutout on y1 by x1. So this is contained in a smooth locus of y. And you also assume that this y1 is big, so that means that the complementary has codimension at least 2. So in practice, y1 will be precisely yreg, smooth locus of y. Now again, you fix a number-land model. And for simplicity, let me state the proposition with an analytics of variety, not a formal scheme, but this is the same. So you consider V1 inside X1, a germ or smooth and locally closed analytic submanifold along Y1. So V1 contains Y1 in this case. And the statement is as follows. So V1 is algebraic if and only if the similar condition as before holds. So there exists a positive constant such that for any positive integer and in any global section of L to the power G, assuming that L does not vanish identically on V1, then the multiplicity of S along Y1 is bounded by C times G, G being this positive integer. So here the multiplicity is the usual one. So yes, this is the order of vanishing along Y1. So you see, this is exactly the same statement as before. And yes, it's just a remark, as I said, that you can replace V1 by a smooth formal scheme with support Y1, and you can work over any field K, not necessarily a complex positive varieties. But for simplicity, let's stick to this situation. Okay, so we want to prove this again. And the proof is as before, exactly as in the proof of proposition A. So what you do is you consider the Zariski closure of V1 in X, and you need to show that the dimension of the Zariski closure is precisely the dimension of V1, call it T. Now define subschemes VI contained in Z1 by the I plus 1 power of the ideal of Y1 in V1. So you consider the infinitesimal neighborhood of V1 inside the analytics of variety. So this defines the subschemes VI. As in the proof of proposition A, one has to understand the dimension of the space of global section of L to the power G restricted to Z And as before, you introduce a filtration on it, Fi, by the order, the filtration is given by the order of vanishing along Vi. So this is the sections, the global sections, such that the restriction of S to Vi is identically 0. And as before, this gives a decreasing filtration on the space of global section you are interested in. Now, again, you use the assumption about the multiplicities. And if, say, G is large enough, so remember that we had to use the Searle's vanishing theorem. So this is exactly the same here. So if G is large enough and I is larger than CG, then the Fi piece of the filtration has to be 0. And in particular, again, the dimension of the space of global sections is bounded by a finite sum of the dimension of the quotients. So up to now, this is exactly the same proof as before. So you have to do something more here because the Z is not a point in this case. So now the argument is as follows. So for simplicity, let me assume that Y1 is exactly Y. So Y is spools, and you have your complex analytic manifold along a projective variety Y. Then, exactly as in the case of proposition A, you can bound the quotient of the dimension of Fi modulo Fi plus 1 by the dimension of the space of global section on Y of the symmetric power of the conormal twisted by some power of the Ampoline bundle L on Y you are interested in. And this is the space we want to understand. And now this is the consequence of the asymptotic Riemann rule that says that there is a positive constant C that depends only on the geometry of X, Y, and Z, X and Y, sorry, such that in fact this dimension here, so the dimension we are interested in here, is bounded by this constant times I plus j to this power dimension of Y plus the rank of the normal bundle minus 1. So just a few words about this bound here. So the dimension here, the number here is in fact is the dimension of the projectivization of the conormal bundle over Y. So consider the projectivization of the conormal. You get a projective variety over Y of precise dimension, this one. And this identifies with the section of the I power of the tautological line bundle on this projectivization, and just twisted by the pullback of some line bundle there. So you can bound everything by an ample class and applying Riemann-Roch, asymptotic Riemann-Roch, you get precisely this bound here. So this you have to just remember that this is just the dimension of the projectivization of the normal bundle. So again, as soon as you have this estimate, it's easy to see that the growth of this space of global section here is equivalent to G to the power T, where T was the dimension of V1. So V1. So as before, this implies that your analytic germ of variety is algebraic. This is exactly the same statement as the statement by Bost. Okay, now I want to state a consequence of the proposition B before. So this is the following statement. So I want to apply proposition B to the case of foliation. So you consider a normal projective variety, you fix an ample Cartier divisor, and you consider a possibly singular foliation on it. And now you make an assumption. So you assume that for some positive C, positive constant C, the space of global section here of this guy, so the reflexive symmetric power of G dual twisted by L to the power G. You assume that this space is 0 when G is larger than when I is larger than C times G. So you probably recognize the condition we had before, and the conclusion is that the foliation G has algebraic leaves. Let me just make a comment on this condition. if X is smooth and the foliation is regular, you can consider the projectivization of G dual. And you can see that this condition is equivalent to the tautological class on this projectivization is not pseudo-effective. But in a singular case, it's better. I mean, the way we state it is the following one. Okay. So let's see the proof of this statement. So we want to apply proposition B. So we have to find a subvariety. It is projective, or at least quasi-projective, and we have to find an analytic, a germ of a complex analytic manifold containing this subvariety, plus an assumption on the multiplicities. So start with X1, containing the regular locus of X, the open set where our foliation is regular. And we will work on this open set. So this is a big open set. So the complement of X1 in X, as Scotty mentioned, at least 2. Consider the product of X1 with itself and the product of X with itself also, call it Z. You pull back your line bundle on Z under the two projection, and you cook up this ample line bundle on the product. And now we consider Y1 in Z. So Z is a product. This is just a diagonal embedding on X1 into the product. Projective counterpart of this. Okay, so you just look at the diagonal in the product. Now you want to cook up an analytic subvariety. The way you do this is as follows. So you remember that we have chosen X1 so that G is regular on X1. So in particular, it induces an equivalence relation on X1. So you just say that 2 points are equivalent if they are on the same leaf. Then you can consider the graph of this equivalence relation. This is contained in the product X1 times X1. And if you apply the Frobenius theorem, you see immediately that this graph in the neighborhood of the diagonal is a complex analytic subvariety, submanifold. And you consider exactly the germ of this graph along the diagonal. So the diagonal here is called Y1. And V1 is the graph of this, is the germ of this analytic graph. By construction, the normal bundle of Y1 into this analytic variety is precisely the restriction of G, that is open set X1. And this is obvious. I mean, G is algebraically integrable if and only if this V1 is algebraic. Sorry, just because, I mean, if you consider this graph in the product, if you look at the two projections of X1, when you look at the fiber of our point, what you get is precisely the leaf passing through the corresponding point. So what we have to do is to prove that this analytic subvariety is indeed algebraic. But let me replace the assumption on the proposition. And the assumption is precisely that, using the fact that X1 is big, the assumption is that this symmetric power here, twisted by L to the power G, has no global section as soon as I is larger than C times G. Now the claim is that this implies precisely the assumption on the multiplicities we were looking for. Namely, if you have a section here of L to the power G that does not match identically on V1, then its multiplicity along Y1 has to be less or equal to 2C times G. So the 2 comes from the fact that we have considered this line bundle here. So there's 2 copies of L. Let me just try to explain this. I mean, so suppose you have a section, suppose you have that I is larger than Cj, for instance. Suppose that you have a section that vanishes to order I on Y1. So this is a global section of this guy here, twisted by L to the power G. Since this has no global sections, automatically your sections come from this part here. So it vanishes to order I plus 1. So if I is larger than Cj, any section vanishes to order I has to vanish to order I plus 1. You repeat the process and vanishes to any order. So in particular, it is identically 0 on V1. This is the proof of the fact that this multiplicity here is at most 2 times Cj. And then just apply proposition B to our projective subvariety and to this complex analytic submanifold. Proposition B tells you that V1 is algebraic. And this in turn implies that G is algebraically integrable itself. Okay. Now I can state the theorem of Campana and Paon. So the theorem is as follows. You start with a normal projective variety and assume that it is Q factorial for simplicity, and consider a movable curve class, alpha on X, and a foliation, a possibly foliation. The assumption you put on the foliation is that the minimal slope with respect to alpha is positive. And then the conclusion is, as before, first, the foliation is algebraically integrable. And in fact, one can prove much more that the closure of a general leaf is, in fact, rationally connected. But I won't discuss the second part of the statement. I'm just, for today, only interested in the fact that the leaves are algebraic, or the closure of the leaves also. Let me just explain the words in the statement. So a curve class, so an element in N1, is called movable if it has positive, non-negative intersection with any effective divisor on X. Okay, so since X is Q factorial, this number is well defined. So being movable is equivalent to this. In particular, for instance, if you have a general complete intersection curve, it is a movable curve. Now, the slope of torsion-free sheaf is defined as usual. So you take the first chain class, so the determinant of Q, you intersect with alpha, and you divide by the rank. This is the usual definition, except that you replace your ample class or your power ample class by just a numerical curve class. And the minimal slope is the infimum of the slope of Q, where Q is non-zero, torsion-free quotient of our given sheaf G. So this explains the notation here. Let me just now explain just a few words about the proof. We will apply this theorem here. So we want to check this positive constant and satisfying this vanishing. So for simplicity, I will assume that X is smooth. So this is, you can reduce to this case by looking at the resolution of singularities, but you have to work a bit more. So suppose that X is smooth, and there is an important fact that it is due to Campana-Péternel. In fact, this is due to Thomas. This is in an appendix of a paper by Campana and Péternel, and that the minimal slope of the symmetric power of G is I times the minimal slope. So fix an ample line bundle on X, and suppose that the space of globalization here is non-zero. So suppose you have a non-zero section of this vector bundle. So this gives you a non-zero map from the symmetric power of G to L to the power J. Okay, so in particular, this says something on the minimal slope of this guy here. So the minimal slope of Sig, recall that this is nothing but I times the minimal slope of G, is certainly less than or equal to the slope of this line bundle here, because by definition, the minimal slope is the infimum of the minimal slopes. So I'm cheating a little bit, but this is almost correct. So this is certainly less or equal to this slope here, and this slope here is easily seen to be G times mu of L. So I replace mu of L by mu plus 1. You will see immediately why. So in particular, you see that if it is non-zero, then you have an inequality here. I is less or equal to G times some coefficient. So this implies that this space is zero if I does not satisfy this inequality. So if I is larger than 1 plus mu alpha of L divided by this quantity, mu alpha mean of G. Recall that by assumption this quantity is positive. This is a non-negative number. So we have our constant positive, our C positive here. So in particular, the theorem applies. We have the vanishing we were looking for, provided that I is larger than a constant that is positive times G. So this is Campana pound. And maybe to end this first lecture, let me state a result that goes back to Bost and Bogomolov-McQuillan. So the paper of Bogomolov-McQuillan is published in 2016, but the preprint was in the archive exactly at the same time of the paper by Bost. And this is very similar to Campana pound. This is slightly different, but this is very similar. So you start with a normal complex projective variety, and you consider a foliation on it, possibly singular. Now you take a complete curve that is disjoint from the singular loci of X and G. So in particular, our foliation is regular along this curve C, and assume that the restriction of G to C, so this is a vector bundle, so assume that this vector bundle is in fact humble. And then this implies that the leaf through any point of C is algebraic. And moreover, if you consider a leaf through a general point of C, you can also prove that the leaf is rationally chain connected, or rationally connected exactly as before. And the proof is exactly the same as before. I mean, you can deduce this theorem for the previous theorem exactly as in the case of Campana pound. So what you have to do is just to cook up to find a variety and to find an analytic subvariety containing this one. And just this time you don't work in the product of X with itself, but you work in the product of C with X, where you see C embedded diagonally in this C times X. So you look at the graph on the inclusion, and the way you cook up your analytic subvariety is just you attach along C the leaves, the germ of leaves passing through C. So now Frobenius theorem tells you again that this is a germ of complex analytic variety along C. And using this positivity assumption here, you can check that our assumption on the multiplicity is satisfied again. So you can apply proposition B and get this, at least the algebraicity part of the theorem of Bost and McQuillan. So these two results will be very important in our study of Fano foliations with Carolina, as you will see in the next lecture. Thank you.